Welcome to the Momentum Lifestyle Podcast, where we interview an inspiring, educational, and entertaining guest to help you build confidence, find balance, and live a life of impact. We'd like to thank our sponsor today, Be Spunky. Now, Blake, Gino, and myself have been using their Reboot product for well over 6 months now, and it has been life-changing. I found myself recovering faster, having way more energy throughout the day, and honestly feeling just more jacked up as a man. And this is because Reboot is clinically formulated to support healthy male hormone levels, providing stress relief, improved strength and stamina, enhanced drive, and overall well-being. Be Spunky Reboot contains a proprietary blend of 10 natural and organic herbs and active ingredients that are renowned for helping men to enhance physical and cognitive performance, improve stamina, energy, and endurance, optimize testosterone levels, support healthy reproductive function, support cardiovascular function, relieve stress, mild anxiety, irritability, relieve tiredness, fatigue, support healthy sleep patterns, and support healthy body weight. So as you can see, it is a must-have product for all men. So head to their website, bespunky.com.au. That's bespunki.com.au, and use the code MOMENTUM to receive 10% off all Be Spunky products.
Jordan, Chenery, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Blake. It's nice to be here, actually.
Mate, looking forward to talking all things marathons, being plural. But before we get started, can you give the guys a 60 to 90 second spiel about you and what's got you to where you are now?
Yeah, it's 60 seconds, basically multiple business owner that has really discovered the art of ultra endurance over especially the last kind of 10 years, something that's not just helped me in my day-to-day life, it's also helped me in my business life as well. And that's really like pretty much led me to where I am today and kind of how it rounds out, not just, my life, but also my community around me's life as well.
That was the sharpest and punchiest intro that I've had so far, mate. Appreciate it. I didn't expect to go down this path, but we'll start there anyway. You mentioned just then it's helped you in your business life. How's that been the case?
If you lead more on the ultra endurance side, I think, what I've learned is obviously a marathon is a huge feat for anyone, and I'm not going to take that away. And either it's running a 5 or a 10K race. But for me, kind of diving into that ultra stuff, not only does it test you physically, but it also tests you mentally as well. I think, if you don't get on top of it yourself and really level yourself out with those emotions, there's no way you're going to get to the finish line because, as I say with my, the crew and the people around me that, I can't get through these big races on my own. Let's just clear that up right now. It takes a team to do that. I always say to them, don't ask me how I'm feeling because I'm probably feeling like shit. And I just say, look, get to the next checkpoint or get to the finish line. And I think that's a big thing as well in business where, people are, they're not celebrating the discipline. They're trying to always celebrate the result. And I think if they, fall in love with kind of celebrating the discipline, the results will then come. And that's basically been the biggest one for me in my business life. And if I touch on that a little bit as well, it's also controlling those emotions, as you know, Blake, like if you don't control your emotions, like it doesn't matter how good your day is, like something's going to get thrown at you, as much as you try and plan your day, things go wrong. And if you can't control yourself, like, how on earth are you going to get through it? And if people rely on you as well, there's no point being a mess, you've got to try and control it some way. So yeah, there's some nice correlations between obviously the ultra side of things, any kind of running, and obviously the business as well.
Before we dip into your most recent feat, do you want to give people a quick insight into what you've done and why you decided to tackle it?
So I think the month of June, what happened was I had a race that was postponed, and I thought, this is the first time in my training life where I've had a really solid window of like 5 to 6 weeks where I could kind of let my training go a little bit and do something that really tested me, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally as well. I followed a lot of people that, I've either ran across Australia and done some of these things, and I wanted to get a feel for it myself. So on the 1st of June, I decided to run a marathon every day for 33 days. I was originally going to do it for the month, but then the Gold Coast Marathon fell on the 3rd of July. So I thought, why not just link in a couple there? And so I basically just started that journey of like back-to-back ultra running days to try and get a feel for what it actually feels like in person.
You've mentioned mental and emotional fitness a fair bit, which is such a catalyst for the work that you've done. What inspired that? Was there a piece that you wanted to move through yourself? Was there a cause that you felt called to? Obviously, you mentioned kind of, some of the other people that have done some pretty mean feats. Was there anything that really sparked that, like, fuck it, I'm going to give this a crack?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, there's nothing better than just kind of throwing yourself into that deep end. And it's a bit cliche, but to be honest, it really did scare me when I first decided to not just commit to it. I actually made it public as well. And as you know, Blake, it's nice to kind of throw those goals out there because it does keep you accountable as much as we'd like to say that we can do our day-to-day stuff. It's nice that a few people around you can kind of pull you into line and say, well, like you've committed to it now, like you can't pull out. And I love that because I haven't always been like that, to be honest. It's been something that I've really had to work hard on from that accountability side. But I think, when I think it was day 3, I remember chatting to my mom and I was like, Mom, what the fuck have I done? Like this is like, and I've got 30 to go. I'm thinking in my head, like, I can't think like that. I can only think about tomorrow and what I'm going to get through. So I think learning to control those emotions early, even when I did feel like I was a little bit under stress, like I didn't really sleep for the first week, to be honest. I had a really, really lousy 4 to 5 hours because I was just wigging myself out every night sleeping. And, I put a lot of pride and effort into my sleep schedule. And, most people should set an alarm to go to bed rather than wake up, I think, so it's that ability to try and just get that sleep was probably one of the biggest challenges that I had in the month.
Before we rip into the 33, what was the physical, and if there was anything specific around the mental, what was the physical and mental preparation for that? How much lead time did you give yourself? What was that process like for you?
I kind of threw it out there 3 weeks before I started. So once my race got postponed and I had a window there, I threw it around with a few friends and people close to me, and a few people did doubt me and said, nah, like you're going to get injured, and that's okay. Like I was okay with that. But I also knew in the back of my head that there were people that have done it, and there's people that have chipped away and they've ran back to back, 7 days, 14 days, 50 days, 100 days, whatever. So I kind of just reached out to them because, as I say to a lot of people, only a fool doubts proof. Like if you've got someone that's gone out and done it, I'd rather go to them for advice and just kind of be like, all right, so tell me what you did. So I kind of lent on a few people and I didn't really think about it too much until I got to the first day. And then once I got into that first day and got that under my belt, I was like, all right, how can I improve every day to just try and get better and better and better? Just little things, nail my nutrition, make sure I finish every day healthy. Even who's running with me, that was a big one. I was really careful around who the people were that were inside that circle. I kind of lent on a few people that have done it and kind of listened to their advice and then took that and then applied my own knowledge and around nutrition and physical and mental to try and get me through it.
Correct me if I'm wrong with the timeline. You gave yourself 3 weeks preparation, but I'm guessing naturally you're in a pretty good position. Like you, if I've got the timeline right, you had trained yourself up for that event that got cancelled. And then obviously in a pretty good condition, potentially even peak condition, you were ready to go and just gave yourself an extra 3 weeks. Is that about right?
That's about right.
What does the process look like for you in terms of mentally preparing yourself? And you've kind of said it a couple of times and I resonate with it massively in terms of those long events that I've done. If you're thinking about the duration, you're fucked already. So what does that preparation look like the week leading into something like that, the night before, and even the first day? Do you remember anything kind of specific from a thought and a preparation point of view?
Yeah, I do actually. This was something that I needed a lot of fuel to get me through. So I needed to be on top of my nutrition game, which, I'm onto every day anyway. I just needed that extra kind of preparation to be like, I don't need to spend all day in the kitchen making my meals. So, I really prepared myself up for a kind of a base, and then it allowed me then to build on that as I learnt like each day around what's going to work better or not. Obviously, I live on my own and stuff, so I really took care of it, a lot of it myself. I think a couple of people dropped some sweet potatoes and stuff off to me as well, and so it was just preparing those things as well. And I think that was the biggest thing, of just kind of noting down exactly what I was going to eat, because you're burning 6,000 calories each day. Part of my day-to-day, I tried to live a normal life after I got through each marathon, and I still had my work and I still did all my things that I needed to. I just didn't want to interrupt that by not being prepared around my food. So I think that was probably the biggest thing. Obviously, what I was going to wear, because as you don't want to wear something that's uncomfortable for 4 or 5 hours while you're out there running. And I made it a bit of a pact to the people around me that I was going to make sure that I commit to only 5 hours. I didn't want to go any longer. There was only 1 or 2 days where I went longer, just because of the blisters that I had, but it was just kind of preparing myself to be ready for those. So in my head every day mentally, I knew that, if I could get through the first 8Ks and get through my nutrition right and fuel myself up, I knew that I was going to be in for a good day. And then whatever happened after that.
What is it? You said a couple of times now in terms of the significance of the environment. What did you need from the people that you were running with, and what did you potentially need just in general life? So you mentioned earlier, I totally resonate with it, the importance of just really channeling who you listen to, because you put yourself out there with an event like that and you get everyone projecting their own kind of limitations and bullshit stories onto you. So what do you do to bubble yourself and filter the information that you're taking on? And what did you need and get in terms of the people that you ran with?
It's a really, really good question. Yeah, you and I both know that your environments are everything, not just training and being around this. But I had a couple of really amazing humans that did multiple marathons with me over the month. They were kind of like my little captains, I guess. And I don't say that very lightly, because their help definitely got me through it. And they kind of put a little bit of a shield, if you will, around me on the days, right? I have a little whisper to them and just say, look, let the people join in today, but I'm not really in a mood to talk. So I think the communication was probably the biggest thing around that. And then they would feed that on to those people joining in. I'm all for using training and running as like a therapy. But as you know, sometimes you just got to protect yourself a little bit as well around, what kind of comes in. And I had a guy that was, he had great intentions, but, he started talking about this stuff of why his wife had left him. And I'm thinking, I don't need this right now. So I just had a little mention to some of the boys, and I just kind of said, can you just try and give me a little bit of space while I focus for the next couple of hours? Because it's not really... So that, I think, just leaning on them, Blake, is probably a big one, because they did take a little bit of pressure off me by not having to talk to anyone. And in 1,400 Ks, I think I did 100 Ks on my own. Unbelievable community just around that. Definitely got me through, even on the days where I just didn't feel like talking to anyone. They were just so respectful. They just sat on my shoulder, and, they offered me food and offered me to go and get stuff every day. So, I don't mention the teamwork lightly, because this isn't something that, I had to get myself right every day, but it's a team effort to kind of do this stuff.
What was if we kind of break it down in the first week, because I think you got blisters pretty early on, didn't you?
Did, yeah.
Yeah. So what does the first week look like? So if you're kind of channeling and tracking your mental state, what did you notice in week one, whether it was after the first event or even after that those blisters kicked in? What was some of the kind of dialogue and stories that kicked in week one?
Well, it was it got pretty intense, to be honest. I really needed to go into like a bit of a damage control mode. It was all new to me. Like, you know, you've run before with blisters and done triathlons and stuff, but when you've got like this massive road ahead of you, you're just like, what do I need to do now? And they were probably the hardest days for me when I got the blisters, because it really changed my whole gait. I started to, you know, I limped, I think 14 or 15 marathons in my notes. I actually limped through. I didn't have a normal gait. And that's something that, you know, you do start to question yourself, like, am I going to cause injury, or are these kind of things? But I wasn't in any pain in any of the days. I didn't feel like, you know, things were hurting, or, you know, it was just a little bit slow, which was kind of frustrating, which is something that I really adapted to fast. Just saying, you know what, get rid of my ego. All I need to do today is just literally get to the first 8Ks, 16Ks, 24Ks, 32Ks, and I've got 10Ks to run home. So I kind of broke it down like that. And I used a couple of those days just to slow everything down. It actually worked in my favor in the end, because I left, you know, I finished the Gold Coast Marathon with, you know, being the fastest of all of the marathons over the month. And I think it just come down to just slowing myself down. So, you know, in running, it's nice to be able to do that zone 2, but I think some of those days I was like in zone 1. And, you know, I'm out there for a little longer, but, you know, it's a privilege to be out there, because there's a lot of people that don't get into that position to be able to do that. So you know, you kind of think of these things and mentally to try and get yourself up every day, just to get yourself right. So I'm not going to lie, there was days where I was like questioning myself, like, what am I doing? And, you know, I was down in Melbourne for like 5 marathons. It was like 4 degrees some mornings when I started. And it's, you know, it's cold, it's wet. And then you've got these blisters on top of it, and you're just like, how do I get myself up today to get myself right? And I definitely felt myself kind of level up in those moments where I look back at it now and be like, well, you know, you said something, then you went through and actually did it. And to be honest, it's, you know, something that you could definitely be proud of, because it's easy just to throw it in when you get to that point.
There's plenty in that. You mentioned the ego, which does for a lot of people play a really big role, and I've noticed it a lot in my events as well. What role did that play, and how do you battle with it? Because it can take some fucking energy with you, like when you're back and forth trying to contend with it. So what was the stories and the dialogue that came with the ego, and how did you go about just squashing it?
Yeah, it's really good. Like, you know, like the whole month I was just probably actually the first 14 days, I had this inner voice in my head, like, what are you doing? Like, you know, what are you trying to prove? Like, what is it? And I just bring it back to that inward of being like, you know, all I need to do is focus on today. You know, I don't need to focus on what happened yesterday. I don't need to focus on what happened tomorrow. I've just got to focus on that next kilometer. And there was a few days where it was pretty dark. And there was a few times where your ego kicked in, where you do have to walk. And, you know, like I just let myself walk, and, you know, I kind of had like, to be honest, like everyone was like, oh, why don't you listen to podcasts and audiobooks? I just found them so much head noise. It wasn't like I couldn't pay attention to, you know, someone having a conversation between my ears. I needed to focus on myself. So I'd put some really light kind of either meditation music or some light kind of trancey state with no words, and just, it was real repetitive. And that's kind of got me through some of those harder moments. I also, you know, you speak about having someone alongside you. You can't take that away from just having someone literally sit there next to you, and you just kind of say to them, look, I want to run at like a 6K pace or a 6:30 pace. Can you just sit at that pace? And I literally will just follow you step by step. And that's what I did some days for a couple of hours. Or if someone was on a bike, I just put them in front of me on the bike and be like, I'm just going to follow your wheel. Don't expect to say too much. So yeah, it was just, the ego will come in, but it was only me versus myself. And I think, again, coming back to a little bit of communication with the people around you so that they understand what you're going through helped a lot. And that really got me through some of those moments where I started to question a lot of stuff.
So what do you need from them? Because one of the recurring themes that I'm hearing and is super common is you're not interested in fucking talking too much. So what is it that you need from them? You literally just need them to be quiet and pace you. Do you need words of encouragement? Like what fueled you and what felt best for you?
I think just having someone there so that you're not going through it on your own. I mean, majority of my training I do, I'd say 80% of it is done on my own. So I've got no problems training on my own. I just think something of having this kind of nature to it, where you've got multiple back-to-back days, it's just really nice and refreshing to have someone there that you can kind of lean on if you do need to have a chat, but also you have that ability to kind of just say to them, look, I just need you to pace me. And I think there's a huge credit to them of just being able to do that, because it makes the Ks go over so fast. Like, just get into a bit of a rhythm, and next thing you know, you've done 10 or 12 Ks and they go off to work and someone else will jump in. So yeah, stuff like that's pretty good.
For you, over the course of the 33 days, is there common themes that you saw within the run? So, whether it's the first 10 Ks, you've got a certain feeling or certain train of thought, or the last 10 Ks, did you see any kind of common themes in terms of the head noise and what you found yourself kind of moving toward?
Oh, I think the first 5Ks in the first week for me was hell, because it was like, what, my body's just going, what on earth are you doing? So I think breaking that down, and this is again where that ego kind of popped in. I slowed myself down and tried to use that first 5K as a bit of a warm-up. After the first week, it was fine. It wasn't even an issue. Apart from the blisters, which gave me a little bit of soreness, I guess, or just that limp because my body was looking after itself. I didn't really have to think about it too much. And I think, days 20 to 30 just went like that, because I was just so much in like this flow state of like, I had all my nutrition right. I knew my sleep was good. The people around me were sweet. Like, it was just this, everything kind of just linked up of something that had taken me probably 3 weeks to organize and get right. But once I did it and I found my groove, it just literally was like clockwork. I just knew that, again, I'd carry a couple of bananas, I'd have those at 8Ks, and I knew that was my first checkpoint in my head. And, I'm not checking my Garmin all the time. I'm just literally enjoying each 8Ks. And I just kind of fell in love with that ability to be like, all right, I got to 8Ks, I got to 16Ks. And that's how I really just broke my days down. And then, like when I was on the Goldie, I'd always stop at the Fox's Pantry in Tugun. They have these unbelievable muffins. And I just knew that at 32 Ks, if I can grab a muffin, I've got 10 Ks home. And to be honest, half the guys and girls that joined me just came for the muffins, I'm pretty sure, just to try and get through, I was like, sweet, this is awesome. So, just having those little checkpoints in my head did make it easier. And I just kind of based it around my nutrition. And I found that worked really, really well. I knew that if I could take on my nutrition at 8 and 16 and 24 Ks, it just gave me a little bit more of confidence finishing at the end of the day nice and healthy, and with, a whole bunch of food and nutrition inside me that, I wasn't just curled up in bed for the rest of the day either.
It's always good to set a plan, but it rarely goes according to plan. What was the difference between the plan that you started with and intended and the plan that actually played out?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't learn a lot through this. I did learn a lot around what works from a nutrition point to kind of get myself up, right? So if anything, I did actually decide to fill a couple of waist belts with me, and that was something that I didn't do at the start, because to be honest, I didn't really know. So when I got to a point where I kind of figured out that I do need an extra bottle of water, 500 mils with an extra 300 calories in it, it made that last 10 Ks much more enjoyable than just being like, oh, I've just got 10 Ks to go and I know I'm going to be out here for another hour. And so it really did build my confidence as I finished, knowing exactly what worked from a nutrition point of view. And to be honest, I could notice it because I was talking to people in that 30 to 40K, which I didn't really do for the first couple of weeks because I was just trying to figure out what works and trying to get to the end of the marathon each day. So
what are your recommendations for people from a nutrition point of view when it comes to kind of those longer events? Because similar to you, well, you're probably more educated on that, but in my first kind of 12 months of training for the Ironman and stuff, I didn't really understand the significance of it until I kind of got it right. And then I was like, fuck, I'm a new person. What's the recommendation and what have you found on your journey in terms of finding the right nutrition for yourself?
yeah, I mean, some people, as you know, like the goos and the gels and that kind of stuff, I kind of kept clear of those a lot. I really did just use, a basic electrolyte powder with all the nutrients that I needed. And that just worked really well for me. I knew that if I could take 300 calories on basically every 40 minutes, I was in a good position at the end. And obviously throwing a muffin in there as well. It's always nice when you're in a calorie deficit every day to just smash half a muffin, knowing that, that'll just get you through to the end and you're going to finish walking around as opposed to, I'm dead. Like I've just done a marathon. I need to spend the rest of the day in bed. So I think little things like that have just worked really well. I knew 300 calories roughly every 40 minutes just worked really, really well for me. And if you want to talk about the importance of having someone there, it's nice for them to actually carry some of your stuff too. Because, if you've got a couple of liters of water on you and then you've got, a couple of bananas and like you're carrying a lot of stuff. And I didn't really want to rely on anyone to be on a bike and do all that stuff. So I just kind of took control of it myself and knew that whatever I had on my waist belt was what I would do. And actually, I did that exact strategy in the Gold Coast Marathon as well. And it worked really, really well as well. So yeah, just learning how it went. I started with 200 calories every 40 minutes, but it clearly wasn't enough as I got to day 10 and I just went into a bit of a deficit. So I just upped the calories and that just worked really, really well. I finished each day nice and healthy and happy. And that was my aim.
What would you do differently if you had your time again from a preparation point of view, from a support point of view, even from like a recovery point of view, which I want to go into your recovery in a sec, but in hindsight, now you've had 3 or 4 weeks to kind of reflect and there'll be plenty of reflecting that would have been done. What would you do differently next time? Differently if you were to ever do it again?
Yeah, I think most people don't know this, but this was a really platform for me to run across Australia for next year. So it's actually my training to figure out what worked well, what didn't work well. And so this was just the ultimate training program of figuring out what I would do. And I think if anything, it would be, give people a little bit more notice so that they can get to where they need to be. I did run a couple in Melbourne and Sydney as well. I was going to do Uluru, but they kept cancelling my flights. And, anyway, that's another story. But, I wanted to kind of get around some of the people in the different cities where I know people. So I'd just give them a little bit more time so they could get their stuff together and probably come and do some with me. A lot of the, you talk about surrounding yourself with crazy people. The crazy people for me is just like, they just seem normal, like, yeah, we run back-to-back 100K days. So it's like the conversations that you have is like what they do and what you do. It's not like too dissimilar. More like, how can we support each other? Or I might lean on them to be like, so what do you need to take in when you do a 12-hour run, for 10 weeks every day? So yeah, it was just I think just probably the communication of getting it out to people so that they could kind of have an idea of where you are and what you're doing. Again, you always need those little captains around you as well, because if you do make it public, you've got to expect that everyone's going to join you at some stage, and you just don't know whose energy you're going to pick up. And it does make a huge difference when you have someone that's constantly chatting and it's just like, it's not your jam.
Yeah.
I don't want to be disrespectful or rude, but, it's draining me a bit. If you've got someone to kind of whisper and just be like, I need some space for the next hour, without, obviously you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or don't want to make them feel welcome, but you also have to protect your own little space too.
I noticed, have you ever seen Iron Cowboys documentary of I noticed he was fucking dialed in. He didn't want to have a word to anyone else. So it's good to be able to kind of hear that and again, not take it personally and get caught in, your own stories in your own way. What was the difference between the really grateful, liberating and fulfilling moments and thoughts and the darker, more challenging thoughts? What does that kind of internal dialogue look like?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'd be lying if I said everything was, kind of all happy days. It wasn't. I was lucky enough to finish at a couple of schools, and some kids asked me the same questions, like, and one of them was just like, how do you get yourself up every day and do that? And I just basically said to him, you know what, there's a lot of people out there that can't even tie their shoelaces and get up every day. So if I looked at that as a bit more of an honor and then that privilege of being able to go through that hurting type, I wouldn't say suffering. It's not suffering. It's more just you've got to put yourself into a position that, it's hard for a bit. I think when you see that and you start to feel that, you really start to level yourself up. And I started to look at it as in, I'm in a privileged position here to be able to feel this. I'm in a privileged position to be out here, in amongst the elements. And you know how much rain we've had. I think I had 15 seconds of rain in Melbourne City and Gold Coast the whole month. I had nothing. It rained all before and rained all after. I was prepared to, put myself in their days where it was like just going to rain and stuff, but it didn't. So I think just putting yourself and finding joy in the moments where it was a little bit difficult is something that I've definitely learned to kind of pay attention to. So I'm very much aware of that now. I've noticed it in, my training now that I'm back into training, that I have a different way of approaching, my sessions now as well. I don't look at it as if, it's going to be something that's going to scare me anymore. It's like, put yourself in there and be like, you know what, whatever happens, happens. Like, there's no point freaking yourself out over something you see on paper. Like, whatever your body is going to do, it's going to do. So you just get yourself into the right mindset and then just take it from there.
What's the dark side of it? So obviously you have moments where you're battling with your ego. You're having moments of doubt whether it can be done. Is there any other specific moments? Did you find yourself like things come up that you just didn't expect? Like if you get caught on the surface level, there's the good and the bad, but was there anything specific where you're like, fuck, I didn't expect that, or good, bad, ugly, or indifferent?
Yeah. And I had a few tears at a few stages as well. I think like emotionally I was kind of a bit beaten up, and I look back at that now, and obviously with all the stuff that's happened over the last couple of years, and some people know my story about how I pretty much left Melbourne with a drop of a hat, and I got up to the Gold Coast, and there's a whole nother story for that. But I kind of reflected on some of those things and thought, you know what, it's been an absolute blessing in disguise that the last couple of years had led me to this point, whether you look at it like that or not. And that kind of did bring up some emotions and stuff. And there was a couple of days where I was kind of on my own just for maybe 10 or 15 minutes where you just like, you should be like, put yourself in a position where you feel proud that you've got to this point, because there's not a lot of people that, would be able to do this. And I was always reminded of that as well. So yeah, there was a few tears every now and then as well, of just things that I'd reflected on in both my personal and business life, and things that I'd kind of looked that I could have done a little bit better. And there was a lot of thoughts. Obviously you're at for a long time. So, these kind of things I definitely didn't push down. I definitely was like, I need to deal with these. And it's a really nice way to kind of face those. And at the end of every day, I just journaled like I would every day anyway. And I kind of wrote those things down, and I've looked back on those and been like, that was a little moment that I probably needed to just be like, you've grown from where you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So you should look at that as like, a bit of a way to celebrate that, you aren't in that same position as you were 5 years ago.
What is it? Because I actually don't know this part of your story. What is it about the transition from Melbourne or where you were 5 years ago that brought the tears? Are they tears of sadness, pride? Like what
Yeah.
on a deeper level is that?
Yeah, I think it's actually a really good question. Obviously, the years of COVID, you watch Melbourne just basically be destroyed. There's no doubt about that. You know, I love that city, and I lived there for 12 years. And I was fortunate enough to go back and do this, and it was just a shell of a city. And you know, I come back and told some friends that, you know, with all due respect, I don't need to be here anymore. It's just not my kind of vibe right now. So, you know, watching it being shut down at the time, it's kind of taking care of two autistic kids, and basically, you know, in a nutshell, I was threatened to be arrested because they didn't have masks on, and I just said, even with their disabilities, they don't understand what you're telling them, and they threatened me to a point. And I just got back home and I said, I called my parents. I said, look, I'm packing a bag. I don't care what it takes. I need to get to the Gold Coast. And everyone was in the airport. It's like hazmat suits. And this was at that time. And I was just like, you know, the fact that I made that quick decision and being like, you know, and it was hard for me I look back at it now, and obviously I took care of these two kids for a long time, like almost 4.5 years. I watched them grow into like young adults. So they were a massive part of, you know, kind of my life. So the fact that I just literally was like, hey, I've had enough. Like, obviously, it kind of rocked me, and have points of what you will around what happened. But for me, I just wasn't vibing. I needed to be in a fresh environment. And so, yeah, those kind of things reflected back. There's not a lot of people that know that story, but probably going to know it now. But it was something that, you know, for me was a really pivotal moment to where I got to. And I look back over the last probably 2 years that I've been on the Gold Coast, and they've definitely been some of the more enjoyable years. And been around such a sense of community that I probably didn't have when I was in Melbourne. So it's funny how you change those environments, you start attracting those kind of people, and they were probably the people that I probably needed 5 years ago. I just couldn't, in my head, I hadn't done enough work on myself to attract those kind of people in, and now I'm just, you know, surrounded by an abundance of them, you know, of all different people that I can learn from as well.
What is it specifically then that brought about the emotion? So you obviously mentioned the specific incident in Melbourne and fleeing Melbourne and the upgrade that you've had over the last couple of years. Is it tears of joy and gratitude? Is it tears of like being like proud of, like, what are the tears do you think? Obviously you're in an heightened emotional state from doing fucking endless marathons, but like, what do you think that is on a deeper level that's really coming up for you there?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say too much it's sadness. I would say it's more tears probably of joy when I look back at it. It's probably that ability of, you know, as I mentioned before, of actually giving yourself a little bit of, you know, a pat on the back every now and then to be like, you know what, you've got yourself into a position that you've allowed yourself to grow into. And you know what it's like, Blake. We don't take enough credit for what we do, and we don't want to talk about, you know, our achievements and sometimes this and that, but it is nice to be able to be like every now and then. And something that I've definitely looked inward to be not being as hard on myself, especially when I have those days where I feel like I haven't done anything and I'm like, you know, you've done shitloads. Like, what are you talking about? You know, just be a little bit more gentle with yourself. And so it's definitely not a sadness. It's definitely not a depressed state. It's more of a state of, as you said, I was in flow, and I kind of just had these tears where it was like, yeah, you know, like you're doing something pretty solid. You know, if those kind of kids could see what you were doing right now, I'm sure they'd just be like, what the hell is this guy doing? And so those kind of feelings did come up. It was the first time I'd been back to Melbourne since I'd left. So there was, you know, a few things there as well. And obviously I've done a lot of training in Melbourne. So it kind of brings back some of those memories of like training with some people that I don't really talk to anymore. And, you know, I've kind of, with all due respect, you've kind of outgrown them, and it's a different kind of environment that, you know, I've created for myself. And that's something that, you know, I look back on and I'm definitely proud of. It's something that I've reflected on each day when I wrote those journals, to be like, yeah, you've got yourself into this position for a reason, because you've got those little stepping stones that pretty much forced you into this position without me even thinking about it. It just happened.
It's Australians are fucking weird when it comes to being proud because of our like tall poppy syndrome, but it's good to be able to like sit in that, and the nature of, you know, the type of people that we are means that we're constantly striving, and that can take us out of this moment, and often for many of us striving from a place of, or a lack of self-acceptance, e.g. now's not good enough, we're not good enough. So be able to like be self-accepting and loving the version of you now, while still kind of, you know, working towards a better version is a, you know, a brilliant dance. So mate, stoked that you were able to kind of sit in that pride that you had, and hopefully continue to sit in that pride that you've got as well. You know, like obviously you've ticked that box and off to your kind of next adventure, but still being able to kind of honor, you know, what an incredible feat it is as well. So stoked that you've been able to do that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just touching on that too, it's just important to just sit in that moment. And, you know, like when I finished, I gave myself a week and I just made a conscious effort to just sit on my own and be like, think about what you just did. You know, some people every day are like, I wish I could do this. Like, how do you do it? And I kind of remembered all those questions and I wrote them all down in my journal. And I thought, you know, it's just a nice way to actually look back and be like, you know what, you did something that most people, you know, they train once a year to do a marathon. You know, they train once a year to do a 10K run. It's all relative, but it's just nice to sit there and kind of be like, give a response to some of those questions, which I did as well. So yeah, it was just, yeah, as you said, just being proud of what you've done. I think it's what a lot of people aren't doing, even where they are right now. They can be definitely proud of what they've done.
What changes for you now in terms of your outlook on yourself, your outlook on the world, from a probably more a mental point of view? Obviously physically you'd be in good nick, especially building towards, you know, a next level feat next year. But what changes for you? One thing that has stood out, you know, talking to you over the last kind of 45 minutes, is a deep level of gratitude and pride, which is awesome. What else kind of stands out from you from a perspective point of view?
Just I come back to that sense of community around me now, like something that I've probably taken for granted, I guess, for years until I got to this point. I think it's something that I don't take for granted now, because, you know, as you know, just having those good solid people around you that test you in different ways. You know, I've got my running buddies, and I've got my training buddies, and I've got my ultra running buddies, and I've got my business crew. Like, I've got, you know, all people around me that will test me in different ways. And I think, you know, just having that around you is just so important, because you don't want to not get complacent. It's not something that we do. It's just more that you don't want to be left behind, I guess. So to have someone that's, you know, that you can tap into those little circles and those little communities and kind of be like, look, I need some help right now. Like, this is what I need to do. This is where I need to get to. Can anyone kind of give me a hand of like what I need to do, or connect me with someone that, you know, I need to get to this point? Or, and then back onto me as well, as if someone comes to me and be like, oh, do you mind if I train alongside you for my first ultra? I'll be like, you know, of course. You know, you've got to pay it forward and you've got to give it back. Like, it's just not this one-way street from people around me. And I think that's a credit to like actually being able to do the work yourself and just constantly be like, how can I improve myself, you know, each week and each day, to try and get myself to a point where I kind of attract the people around me that need to take me to the new level, but also, you know, stop and smell the roses along the way too. It's not like, you know, what's next? It's like, where I'm at right now is where I'm meant to be. And who's around me that can help me get to the next level when I'm ready to go. And so, yeah, the community is massive. And I think mentally as well, I come back to controlling those emotions. You know, when you look at a lot of the way that I handle some meetings and things that I go to, you know, we've had this conversation in the past, where sometimes you do go into those meetings and it's not the same level of frequency that you're used to. And you could just pick up on it as soon as you walk in the door, and you're like, what am I got myself into? But instead of being reactive, you're a bit more proactive. you kind of see it from their point, you kind of get to a solution, and then it's like, get the hell out of there and, you know, get back into your little tribe of people that you need to, that kind of lift you up. So I would just say that, yeah, community and controlling the emotions are probably the two biggest things for me, that outside my physical feat have been the biggest ones that I've definitely reflected on the most.
What I really like, and it's been a common thread throughout this whole chat, and more like a subtle thread, is the level of boundaries that you put around yourself from a like protection point of view, and really being mindful of what you draw in. And again, not necessarily right or wrong, but just more a case of like what is aligned with me. And everyone should do that. And I suggest that everyone does do it, but the majority of people don't do it. And it seems, based on what you're saying, that there's a real that appears to be at the forefront of your mind since you moved to Gold Coast. So whether the old environment in hindsight wasn't aligned, or whether you've just really stepped into that, it seems like it's quite a strong theme for you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, spot on. I mean, it's obviously people is a big one. As you know, they're going to either drain your life or kind of lift you up. There's nothing really in between. But then you've also got that ability of my business life as well. As, you know, there's no point in me being completely trashed. And as a business owner, you know, that's at a very low frequency, trying to give back and trying to get your clients results, and, you know, just being someone of service. There's absolutely no point. And that's something that I didn't really take for granted until I probably got here. So it's, you know, it's taken me 35 years as an apprenticeship. You know, if I look at it that way, to be able to get to this point where, you know, it took me a long time to realize that if I don't look after myself, I'm never going to be of service to anyone else around me. And you talk about boundaries, it's something like, you know, just little things like I don't check any emails before 9 o'clock every day. And it's just something that I stick to, like, so that I can give myself the best chance to be in the environment fresh and as, you know, responsive or as proactive as I need to be. And yeah, the boundaries is just cut it short. The last 2 years, it's been absolutely amazing just to implement. You just see yourself functioning at a whole new level. Mate,
it's been unreal to see. It was unreal to watch the 33 days and just be able to see, even, you know, often without words, just the roller coaster that you went through, the days where I could see you kind of were a bit, you know, sore with the blisters, and just being able to watch, you know, what is fucking unbelievable feat. So well done on everything that you've achieved. And, you know, as you said, or again, probably an underlying theme of just like, well done on being you. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to, you know, we're here talking about the marathons and the 33 of them, but also just celebrating you as an individual. So it's been unreal to watch, and for us to kind of liaise the way we have as well over the last, I think it's probably been 12 months or so. Mate, where is the best spot for people to follow your work and any journeys that come up over the coming months and years?
Yeah, Instagram's obviously the easiest. I've just become new on TikTok as well. So you find me, same handle, Jord_Chen, just an easy way to keep in touch. And yeah, I like the visual side of things. So pop up a lot of videos. From there, it's probably the easiest way to connect.
Beautiful. Brother, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Well done again. And thanks for jumping on the podcast.
Yeah, appreciate it, Blake. It's an honor and privilege to be here. So thanks again, brother.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in this week. As always, if you enjoyed listening, please leave a review, give us a shout out across socials, or share with a friend so that we can continue to share these incredible conversations with more and more people.